Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Bradler.
I was going to start by saying go blue.
Fading it on out on a Monday evening. Good luck. Good luck. Good God, I can't even speak. Good luck, everybody. Good evening, everybody, is what I was trying to say. We're at the press conferences earlier today. Jim Harbaugh was he's been pretty chipper. I actually heard some people talking about that, Chris. I don't know if you picked up on that. I think you were on one side, I was on the other, but I heard some people just talking like, man, like something's up with Jim Harbaugh. He's happy, he's chipper, he's smiling all the time. And I was kind of overhearing it. I just kind of chimed in. I'm like, yeah, winning 40 games in 3 years will do that to you. So I think that's obviously a big part of it. He knows his team is really good. He's had 2 really good years in a row, on his way to a third. You and I have talked about it. They're really not going to be challenged, it doesn't look like, until mid-November. I mean, they're going to march out to 7-0 or 8-0 or whatever the mark is.
9-0, yeah.
Before they face Penn State. And so Jim Harbaugh does have a lot to smile about, a lot to be happy about. Most notably, the most recent win over Rutgers, 31-7, was the final for the Wolverines. And really, we talked about this on Saturday, Chris. Like, Michigan played like 59 minutes of almost perfect football. They gave up a 70-yard touchdown right out of the gate. Rutgers was up 7-0 with 14 minutes left in the first quarter, and that was it for the whole rest of the day. You said 38-13. Trent said 38-10. I said 42-17. I thought they'd finally eclipse that 40 mark. They still have not. I guess we'll get into that a little bit and see if that really matters at all. But I guess just thoughts again, now that we've had a couple days to digest it. You know, we spent 15 minutes talking about it on Saturday afternoon as soon as the game ended. But where are you feeling now after hearing Jim Harbaugh talk, hearing Trevor Keegan talk, J.J. McCarthy talk? They all spoke today, and now here we are getting ready for the first road game of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you feel good about the team. Obviously, 4-0 is 4-0, and that's exactly where you want to be. And I think I said this, when we did our post-game show, that you're number 2 in the country, you're undefeated, you've done exactly what you wanted to do through this point of the season, and all your goals are still in front of you. So as a fan and somebody who covers a team, I think it's really hard to ask for any more. Hate to harp on it. Has it looked exactly the way we all thought it was going to look going into the season? It hasn't, but that's kind of been the MO for Michigan over the last 2 years. Is there's certain things you thought you might see going into the year. Like last year, it was, this is the year JJ is going to carve it up. As soon as he wins that starting job, it's going to be, slice and dice through the air. And it really didn't look like that. It was a heavy ground attack, and Blake Corum became a Heisman Trophy front runner, and that's what that team looked like. And I think we're all still trying to figure out, what is this Michigan team ultimately going to look like at the end of the season? What will be the identity? Right now, that's like the biggest question mark for me. I don't know that there's anything that I'm really concerned with, and we'll get into it in the burning questions. I think given what the non-conference schedule was, and then what we saw against Rutgers, and then when you look at the remainder of the schedule, I mean, Brennan, the next 5 teams that they play total are 9-11 right now, right? Yeah. Under 500 combined. Their last 3 games of the season combined 12-0. Maryland, Ohio State, Penn State, all undefeated at this point. And
dude, so is this the year for your Terps, dude? Are they for real?
They might be. They might be for real. Who knows? But as far as it relates to Michigan, some of these teams that played a tough non-conference opponent early in the year win or lose, got to find out a little bit about themselves and where they're at as a program. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to wait until 10 weeks into the season till we really get a sense of, just how good the Wolverines are. And that makes me feel a little bit uneasy.
Yeah. I mean, well, they're going to get a little bit of a test this weekend. I mean, I don't think either one of us think that Nebraska is all that good. They do a couple interesting things, and it is a road game. They're going to be treating this one like their Super Bowl. Number 2, Michigan is coming to their house. Thus far, Michigan has won pretty easily, and I don't know. I wonder, how if it'll need to look any different. I see some people in the comments talking about, Michigan hasn't quite opened it up yet, and they haven't done everything that they need to do. I felt like they called some pretty good plays against Rutgers, and Jim Harbaugh said the same. He said that Sharon Moore called a gem of a game, mixing in some tricky stuff here and there, and just a good balance and stuff. So I felt like they called a pretty open game against Rutgers. I don't feel like it was a super vanilla approach, but yeah, you wonder what it'll look like in Nebraska. It's going to be loud. It's going to test the communication a little bit. Trevor Keegan talked about that today. JJ McCarthy obviously will deal with that as well. So yeah, I do think it'll be a little bit more of a test. Chris, right now, would you be more frightened of a Rutgers team or a Nebraska team?
Well, if it's Rutgers at home versus Nebraska on the road,
at their place, yes.
Oh, at their place,
either one. Yeah, sorry, I should have. Yeah,
probably Rutgers. That. I mean, the Rutgers showed some things. I think that I think they're going to have for the rest of the way. I haven't looked at their schedule, but I think that's a team that's going to win 6-7 games. I mean, they look solid. It's just the Michigan defense is elite at this point. And, after giving up that first touchdown, Rutgers wasn't able to do anything the rest of the way. And that's kind of what we've seen from the Michigan defense through the first 4 weeks is that points are tough to come by when facing Michigan. In fact, I think I read a stat, and I don't know where it was. It might have been put out by the official Michigan social media account, but I mean, the total points that they've allowed through the first 4 weeks is historic. I think there's only like 2 or 3 other teams in Michigan history that have put up fewer. I think they're tied for third least points through 4 games in all time in Michigan history. So the defense is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But then you go back to, okay, well, it's ECU, that I think is maybe lost. They're 1-3 at this point. UNLV has a decent, record. Bowling Green is what they are. Rutgers is what they are. But how impressive is it? I don't know, because given the competition, it's really hard to say, like, is this the same type of output we're going to see against, even a Nebraska or a, Minnesota on the road? When are we going to truly know just how good the defense is, just how good the offense is?
Yeah. So, I mean, it feels like last year. We kind of said the same thing last year. I mean, there was a stretch where, I don't know, there just wasn't Michigan's winning by quite a bit and winning big games, winning on the road, and Blake Corum scoring all these touchdowns. Donovan Edwards looks like, one of the best backup, if you want to call him backup running backs in the country as a sophomore. And everybody was just kind of like,
yeah.
Like, seriously, that's like for a month straight. We would look at the analytics, we'd look at the interaction, we'd look at, the viewers on the lot, everything. Everybody's just kind of like, yeah, well, Michigan's going to win again because they're not playing anybody, and they're going to win again, and they're going to win again. And yeah, we're really not going to know maybe until, that tilt in Happy Valley. We'll see. Dude, most years we would say like, well, Michigan State's not that good, but they'll give them dude, Michigan's going to truck Michigan State. If they don't, it would be like an otherworldly kind of experience. I really think it's going to be all the way until November until we find out exactly what this team's made of. All right. Speaking of that, Chris, here are my 5 predictions from last week. I missed 3 of them. And one of them, dude, we talked about it on Saturday. I'm just going to keep guessing until it happens. Donovan Edwards will score a touchdown. He didn't. Again, we're now 4 weeks into the season. 0 scores for Dono. Just quick on that because we did talk about it on Saturday, but it's crazy. I cannot believe it. If you had told me before the season started he's going to be completely healthy going into week 5 with no touchdowns, I would have thought like he switched positions to defense or something.
Yeah, well, the topic was brought up today in the press conference with Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, we heard what his response is, and so that'll be part of of our burning questions segment. But yeah, I will say that, had you told me 4 weeks into the season that he wouldn't have had an offensive touchdown, whether it be on the ground or through the air,
yeah,
I would have at least assumed that the yards were, maybe no scores, but 300, 400 yards, some sort of, massive play or plays that we would have seen from him so far through the year. And it just hasn't really happened. Jim Harbaugh talked a little bit about that during the press conference, and we'll elaborate on that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah. Number 2, I said that J.J. McCarthy will run it 5 or more times, and he did, and quite successfully, actually. I think technically he ran it 6 times. He was down for 7 carries, but in college, a sack is considered a rush. So anyway, I think he had 6 runs, a couple designed ones, and a couple just breaking out of the pocket for 51 yards. It went exactly how I thought. I thought Greg Schiano would bring a little bit of pressure, might flush him out, and I thought Big Ten play, okay, he'll keep a couple zone reads, and he did that, and he talked about that today. Got out of bounds, didn't really take many hits, and was still effective, moved the chains, kind of picked up some first downs. I thought I like running quarterbacks, and JJ has shown that he can really go and pick up some yards. So I'd like to see it about that much every game, maybe more, but it was about perfect, I guess, with the 7 carries for 51 yards.
Yeah, I certainly don't, by now that I don't subscribe to the secret playbook sort of idea that gets floated out there. But I will say, seeing that wrinkle in the offense this weekend, I was encouraged by what I saw, because you can tell when JJ on the read option, when he pulls it and goes, he can be a problem out there. And if Michigan really commits to that in any given game, that's going to give a defense some fits. And another thing that I was encouraged to see was on one specific play where it was a read option. He got out, he got the first down. He actually kind of ran backwards to give himself a little bit of time to get out of bounds. And so you see kind of the maturity, Sharon Moore in his ear about, we need you to protect yourself. We need you around. We need you healthy. He's taking those things in and he's utilizing it on the field. And I do think that as you get into the latter parts of the season, and I know that Donovan hasn't popped off yet, but if you've got to deal with a Donovan, Blake Corum, and J.J. McCarthy on a read option, plus you've got Roman Wilson out there running around, I mean, it's going to be a problem for any defense that they're facing. It's hard to be patient to see it all come to fruition. You can see glimpses of it and flashes of it, and I think Saturday was encouraging.
Yes, sir. Number 3. I thought this would be the week, because I thought Michigan, to some extent, I mean, we saw the starters were in there most of the game. I think JJ played the whole game. I think they got some running backs. So. They got Blake and got Donovan out, maybe mixed up some linemen a little bit. Yeah. But I think JJ was in there the whole time. I thought Michigan would break 40. I thought this would be the week. I thought Rutgers might, challenge them a little bit more than the previous 3 opponents. Turned out that was not the case, other than the one play at the beginning. Michigan finished with 31. So I guess, I mean, the score is what the score is, but that 40 mark, I mean, like, Michigan's not scoring that many points. Is that a problem?
Well, I think there's a couple things, and Trevor Keegan talked about it a little bit today. During the press conference, the new clock and the rules. I mean, you're limited to offensive possessions, and you really got to maximize it. And I know Michigan put up 31 points, but 7 of those points came courtesy of Mike Sainristil on a pick 6. Mm-hmm. So really, I think what's become abundantly clear is that the Wolverines are not concerned with how many points they put on the board, so long as it's more than their opposition. That's really what I think. And I think they're going to play to whatever strengths they need to play to beat that particular opponent that's in front of them on that given weekend. Of course, we thought they would have gone over 40 points. I mean, we saw last year, I think against UConn, they put up 50, and we've seen this offense have some explosiveness to it. But I think this year they're a little bit, I don't want to say snake bitten, but I think they've learned from some things last year. You beat up on a UConn, you beat up on a, Hawaii, you beat up on some of these non-conference opponents, but you also pay the price. I mean, Donovan Edwards, I think his thumb injury, it was either his thumb or his knee injury, occurred in week 2 against Hawaii. And we saw what happened to Blake Corum, what he was dealing with, and then later in the year, how it took him out. So, and Jim Harbaugh referenced that a little bit. He talked about the running backs and wanting to keep all the tread on the tire as much as he could. So I think Michigan is content with You win on the scoreboard. You keep your guys healthy. Doesn't matter if it looks flashy, and you live to fight another week. And that's what they're doing. And it's going to be that way for, at least the next, until we get to week 10, until we get to Happy Valley, and they really need to pull some things out. This is what we're going to see out of Michigan for the next several weeks.
That's a good point, a really good point that you made about the clock. And I hadn't really thought of it that much, but
What did he say? They had four offensive possessions in the first half.
Yes. Yeah. And so did he say they had 7 total? Is that what it
7
was?
Total, maybe. I don't know, something like that. But I mean,
low. It seemed low. Yeah. I was really impressed by Trevor Keegan's understanding of the rule and how much it was affecting their offense and how important that made long sustained drives. He referenced the 8-minute drive. He's like, that's the way that we play, like, you have to be efficient. If you're not going to get the ball that many times, you got to score when you do have it. Michigan's historically been pretty good at that under Jim Harbaugh and with J.J. McCarthy leading the offense. So, yeah, that's not a lot of opportunities. They didn't run that. I was going to look that up real quick while you were talking I forgot how many offensive
and it was
plays
confirmed,
they
ran. Seven
possessions.
Yeah.
And they ran a total of 63 plays, which is actually still a pretty good number. But, I mean, teams routinely hit the 80 mark on plays. And so Michigan, is going to be less than that because of how they play. I know. Yeah, Dwayne down there mentioning the time of the game. I know when we were getting ready to leave, Trent looked over at me. He's like, this game didn't even take 3 hours. It was like 2:54 when we got out of the press box.
Yep.
So all of that does factor into the slightly lower scoring, especially when you play an offense like Michigan does. You're not going to score the 60 points or the 50 points like we've seen in recent years. So, yeah, that'll be something to get used to. And, again, Jim Harbaugh said he doesn't care if you win by 100 or by 1. A win is a win, and he's trying to keep guys healthy and trying to get out of there, and that's what we've seen so far. I was really, really happy to get this one right, Chris. Number 4, the secondary is intact. Rod Moore was back, Makari Page, Will Johnson, Josh Wallace. Mikey Sainer still. The boys are back in town, so to speak. I do think Rod Moore came out just a touch rusty, took pretty bad angle, whiffed on a tackle on that long touchdown. But, it's great to have them back out there. I think the secondary is another group on the field that needs to gel like the offensive line. A lot of communication, a lot of moving parts, a lot of passing guys off when you're in zone, just different stuff like that. That the only way to get better at it is to be on the field with each other. This is the first time all season. So to give up the one big play and then shut everything down after that, I thought was a pretty good sign, but obviously love seeing Rod Moore out there in the number 9 jersey this week.
Yeah, and we talked about it on our pregame show on Friday, and I think you had asked the question, or it came up last week. If we didn't see the full slate of guys back, would there be some concern? And it was really nice to see Will Johnson and Rod Moore out there and playing a majority of the game, because that element to their defense is so critical down the stretch. And you wanted to make sure, like, is whatever injury they're battling, is it serious? Is this something that's going to linger long into the year? Or is this precautionary just given what the non-conference schedule looks like? And I think Saturday answered that question.
Yeah, it was... It had been tricky. We talked about this multiple times too. Every week, just about they're out there warming up. You can't tell what's even ailing them. They're in, and then the game starts and the gloves come off and they're just kind of standing there. And I think Rod Moore was he in street clothes multiple times, or was it just the most recent game? I forget. Not that it matters at this point, probably, but great to see that core group of 5 guys out there, because I think it's a really freaking good group. I mean, Josh Wallace, we're still learning about him a little bit, but the other 4, invaluable to this defense's success, and it was good to see them all out there on Saturday. And last but not least, I got it wrong, but I was close. Gavin Wimsatt did not throw an interception coming into the game. Well, he threw a big one, obviously, on Saturday. Mikey Sainer still took it back 71 or 67 yard, whatever it was, for a pick 6, big play. They only got him once. I thought they would pick him off twice. I thought Rutgers was going to have to throw it around a bunch, and they kind of did. But at the end of the day, Michigan just got 1 pick on him. So, yeah, we've always talked about that's hard to do.
Wimsatt? Is this Gavin Wimsatt?
Wimsatt, yeah, however you pronounce it.
I mean, there were a couple throws he made, at least from my angle, that were pretty impressive, whether it was on, I think maybe a couple.
He's got an arm. Yeah.
they needed a play out of him, and it's clear that he has the ability to obviously make some plays. But yeah, Mike Sainer still, you said it multiple times. We've talked about it on the show. A guy who's always in the right place, right time. He is a playmaker. And that was also something that Jim Harbaugh talked about a little bit. Put that out in an article earlier that Mike Sainer still is already a Michigan legend, and I think any Michigan football fan you talk to will sign off on that gladly. And it's just really cool to watch his transformation and just how important. Even when you get guys back like Rod Moore and Will Johnson, Mike Sainer still shines in that secondary. He's still the guy leading the way. He's the quarterback on the defense. You can see it when you're down there. He's making calls. He's talking to everybody. Yeah. You just can't overstate how important he is to what they do defensively. And it's it's a pleasure to watch, and he's going to be sorely missed when he moves on.
I tweeted this out during the game, but I wanted to call attention to it again. On that play, it was such a cluster over there that most of the players on both teams didn't really realize what happened until Mikey kind of came squirting out the backside. But one of the first people to recognize it was Big Kenneth Grant. Yeah. He got on his horse. He got out in front of Mikey at first. Of course, Mikey passed him, but then he peeled back and blocked Wimsatt, who may have had a chance to catch Mike. I don't think so. I mean, Mikey's got some wheels, but Wimsatt's a great athlete. He can really run, and it would have made it a little more interesting at the very least. But Grant kind of peeled back and just plowed him, and then he's jumping. It was just awesome. I mean, that's a 340-pounder out in front on a pick six. Blocking for his guys, and you love seeing that on the replay on the tape.
It's one of the things I love about doing the photography is, I'm one person down there, so I'm switching between video and camera all the time, and I just happened to be clicked on video during that play and got, and I'll put it up on the Facebook page, but just such a great view of that and what you're talking about, because Will Johnson makes a play on the ball, and you can see he does sort of like the seatbelt celebration or whatever. And then all of a sudden he turns around and looks and sees Mike Sainer still. And then across the camera, you see Sainer still just blazing fast. And then, in the background, you can see Kenneth Grant sort of celebrate. It was a perfect example of how the play is it's never really over until Mike Sainer still says it's over. And you've got a bunch of guys that are celebrating, thinking it's done. And here's Sainer still on his way for a pick six. And I just thought it was such a cool thing to go back and watch how the team reacted to it, because again, opportunistic. He's always in the right place at the right time, making plays that a lot of guys just won't make.
Yeah. And by the way, number 72 for Rutgers was one of the largest dudes I've ever seen.
Big man. Yeah.
345 he was listed at. He's standing there picking his nose as Mikey just goes right around the rear end. Didn't know where the ball was. Didn't know the play was alive. I'm so glad the refs didn't blow it dead, because everybody, even Jim Harbaugh said, I didn't know where it was. I thought maybe it was an incomplete pass, and Mikey just picked it up because that's what we're taught to do. And I mean, dude, you watch it again. You watch it back on replay. It was an incredible break on the ball. Great catch. Keep his balance. I mean, 240-pound Junior Colson jumped on his back basically, and he stayed up, and it was an incredible play. Incredible play from start to finish, and really got the big house rocking. I know Mikey was, had to be ecstatic with the turnout of that play, and obviously everybody else was too. What's he do? The ozone? Is that what it is? I think he does the Z on the side.
Something like that. Well, and then there was a dude I don't know if you saw it, but there was a dude in the crowd that was, I don't know what it's from Incredibles, I think. The guy that the ice in the crowd, in the second row, in the full getup that Mike ran directly over to and singled him out. So
that's hilarious. I did not see that.
And I don't know, we talk about drip all the time. I don't know if you've seen this. I've caught it in pictures, but Mike Sainer still, one of his thigh pads is actually a giant snowflake.
That's pretty icy. That's pretty cool.
The number cool. 0, the snowflake in the pads. You gotta love it.
Yeah, Frozone is the character from The Incredibles.
Is that his actual name?
Yeah, Frozone, and I think Mikey goes by Ozone with the 0 number. I mean, I think that's kind of the deal there. And then that dude actually got a very specific request played by the DJ. He had a paper sign that he held up.
I saw that. Yeah,
DJ played his song, which is
a little Uzi Vert or something like that. He was looking for it. Yeah, okay.
Song that they do that dance to nowadays. But anyway, I saw that guy. He was on the screen a lot. I did not see that Mikey went over to him. That's pretty cool. So anyway, there you have it. I went 2 for 5, but again, trying to be – I don't know how many times I can be wrong about Donovan Edwards not scoring a touchdown. I mean, that one seems to be like it needs to happen.
Well,
but
law of averages, Brandon. Law of averages says it will change in the near future. Has to.
We will get into that shortly, but before that, Mr. Breiler.
This fucking guy.
Before that, it's everybody's favorite segment. I think one of the very first comments of the show here tonight probably stole the thunder a little bit, but we'll do it anyway.
This fucking guy.
I'm going to turn the music back off because we don't want to put Chris's headphones into a conniption over there. So the music off as we do the segment, but I think we need to at least hear it before we get going. Chris, do we want to do 1, 2, 3, say it like Paul Rudd does? On 1, 2, 3, Beatles, Stones, ready, go. And we just say it. Are we going to have the same answer?
Let's just say we'll say it on the count of 3.
All right.
Count us down, Brandon.
2, 3. Ryan Day. Ryan Day.
Hands down, 0 question.
I just hate so much that he got the win. It takes the edge off of calling him the TFG a little bit. I mean, he probably, if he could hear us, he'd say, call me whatever you want. We beat Notre Dame in South Bend on a pretty ballsy call. I'll give props where they're due.
I should have said over.
But, yeah.
Over.
Yes. Notre Dame only had 10 guys on the field. I guess they were thinking Jesus was the 11th one. I heard that joke earlier today. I'm like,
nice. Okay.
What the hell? How do you have that happen on the last 2 plays of the game? I don't know.
But yeah,
Ryan Day, dude, I mean, the guy's shook. His confidence is shook. I know he got a win. It was a big win. Top 10 matchup on the road. You thought Notre Dame was going to win. I don't know if I ever even actually said. It felt like a toss-up game to me. I certainly thought when the game was going on that Notre Dame was going to win, and then Ohio State pulls it out at the very, very end on a 4th down run when they had that was it. They called that play and like either we're going to score or the game's over and we're losing. So it was a gutsy call. They got across the goal line. They win the game. And then Ryan Day completely shows his ass in the post-game press conference, which was hilarious. Just taking shots at 90-year-old Lou Holtz.
He'd actually shown his ass in the press conference and that had been it. Like, I think I would have had more respect for him doing that.
Yeah, the Ohio versus the world comment. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? His voice is cracking, and he looks like he wants to cry, and I hate his hat and his face. Dude, all of it.
Here's what I take issue with. It wasn't all that long ago where, everybody from Ohio State, and when you looked on social media, Michigan was just getting cooked and taking over the coals about – supporting their head coach and holding up the number 4 and, all the things that they were doing when Harbaugh was suspended. And here you have a guy step to the microphone. Now I get it. It's an emotional win. You're the adrenaline is pumping, but if you're Ryan Day and that's what you're going to do in the post-game interview, I just thought it was such a clown show. The way that he was like frothing at the mouth about Ohio against the world. It's always been Ohio State against the world and yada, yada, yada. And calling out Lou Holtz. And I get it. Lou Holtz, he questioned Ohio State's toughness, right? I understand that. But just the lack of composure that he had at the end of the game, my thoughts exactly. And I wrote an article about it. To me, I get that he was frustrated with some of the things he heard. But let's not bullshit ourselves here. We know what's going on with Ryan Day right now. The question about Ohio State's toughness didn't originate with a Notre Dame game or how they performed against Indiana earlier in the year. The questions about Ohio State's toughness began and started back in 2021 when Michigan pushed them around and bullied them in Ann Arbor. And it continued in 2022 when Michigan did the same thing in Columbus. That's where the questions of Ohio State's toughness came from. And guess who was leading the effort in asking those questions? The folks in Columbus, the same people that were calling for Ryan Day's job last November. So when he goes to the podium in the press game conference and says, I don't know where that narrative started about our team. Well, look in your own backyard. It's your folks who started it because you keep getting your ass kicked by Michigan. And so, again, was he ranting? Was he all amped up about the game with Notre Dame? Sure. But a lot of that emotion that you saw from Ryan Day on Saturday night after that win, that's about Michigan. That is all of the frustration and the weight on his shoulders about not being able to beat Michigan coming out of his pores on national television. And I thought it was just beautiful to watch. To me, Chantel, my wife, she's sitting next to me on the couch and she's like, is there something wrong with him? And I'm like, I think there might be. Like, I don't know where this interview is going to go. I hope they cut the mic short because the dude was just on one. He was on one. I thought he might cry.
It had shades to me. It had shades of that politician a handful of years ago that Dave Chappelle made fun of when he's like, "We're gonna go to New York." Yeah, like, dude lost all credibility after that yell.
Okay, can you imagine? If Jim Harbaugh did that,
dude,
post game? Something like that, where Michigan against the world, and I love my guys, and where the hell is Lou Holtz right now? Like you would never hear the end of it. But because Ryan Day did it, you see these Buckeye fans rushing to his defense. Is like, oh, nice job showing emotion, and he loves his play. It's just beautiful to watch. That was a clown show, and anybody that says anything different is they're just not being real about it. That was a clown show.
I feel like I need to Photoshop his head onto that politician at the podium and call him Ryan Dean or Howard Day, one of the two. Thank you for that, Matt Kirby. Yes, Howard Dean, where he just, and everybody was like, well, that guy's off the ballot. It was like instant. In the second he did that, they were like, get rid of this clown. And that's how I felt about Ryan Day in that moment. I'm like, wow.
It reminded me of like back in the day when, they used to take the microphone back where Hulk Hogan was standing before a match or the Ultimate Warrior, and you would ask him a question and then you would just get this bizarre response.
Okay, brother. Yeah, like,
let me tell you something.
Just yelling nonsense. Yeah.
It's us against the world out there, brother.
Mike Tyson. I'm gonna eat his children. Like, all right, Mike. Just relax.
Can we also do this? Can we not let Ohio State, their fans, their coaches, and their players adopt this victim mentality where they're like the stepchild of college football? Give me a break. Can we stop with this narrative that like it's Ohio against the world and we don't get a fair shake in this? And I'm tired of that narrative already. Can we just not allow them to do that and own that? Please.
Oh, yeah. All right. Little macho man, Randy Savage.
Let me tell you something, brother.
You got to throw the brother in there at the end. It really ties the quote together. All right. Ryan Day, clown, whatever. I'm pissed that they won like that.
I will say I did have my post ready.
Yeah.
Finger like on the button, ready to hit send. I'm gonna ask. That'll be part of our burning questions too, because how that game played out. I do have some questions about that. But damn it, man, so damn close. Trevor Keegan said it today during the press conference. He was the biggest Notre Dame fan ever that night.
He sure
and
did.
I think we all were.
I would have had the classic. I use it every time like Michigan State or Ohio State loses when you're whatever. It's the Jerry Seinfeld. That's a shame. While he's eating popcorn on the couch, the gift. That's it. You don't say anything. And people get so mad, and I'm like, how do you even know I was talking about you? Like, that's the beauty of stuff like that. Anyway, Ryan Day sucks. All right, let's go on to quickly. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this. Again, Michigan played well. The possessions were limited. We'll give some shout outs and give some flowers where they're due, but Pro Football Focus had these three young men as the top grade setters for Michigan on offense. Roman Wilson came in at number 1, Chris, with a 74.7. Not as high a grades as we've seen. JJ was in the 90s. Blake Corum's been in the 90s, but this game, I think it'd be cool to go back and dissect exactly why I didn't do that yet. But Roman Wilson with a 74.7, AJ Barner with a 73.7. Jim Harbaugh has been praising that dude quite a bit. So apparently they like everything the Indiana transfer's doing. And then Blake Corum, 73.5. He had the 97 yards and the 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I don't think JJ was actually right after that at number 4. On defense, Chris Jenkins scored at 83.9. Derek Moore was 80.2. He had 5 tackles in the game. Derek Moore showed up in a big way. And then last but certainly not least, Mike Sainer still with a 79.0. Obviously the pick 6. I think he had 2 tackles. Again, just kind of always seems to do the right thing at the right time. And again, pretty much anything in the 70s is considered like a really good score for PFF. So if you get 80s and 90s, like that's crazy. So all these guys, really good days on both sides of the ball, and that's how you get to 31-7. Chris, any thoughts just over those guys? Roman Wilson, AJ Barner, Blake Corum on offense, Chris Jenkins, Derek Moore, Mikey on defense.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, guys that you would expect, and I think as it pertains to Roman Wilson specifically, one of the things I love about his game, in addition to the touchdown catches and what he's doing as a pass catcher, you've heard it from a lot of guys. Jim Harbaugh, you've heard it from the players. He does the little things too. He's blocking really well. Like he is a complete player as a wide receiver, and so again, to see him shine and to be graded out as the highest offensive player after this week, it's further confirmation of what I already believed about him going into the season.
And I'm not going to harp on this because Colston Loveland had a phenomenal game. AJ Barner is grading out well, and Jim Harbaugh is praising AJ Barner. But again, AJ Barner playing more than Colston Loveland. I don't know. It just so far it's working.
AJ Barner has more drip than Colston Loveland. I'll give him that.
He's a
might be
drippy guy. Drippy guy.
He's got the visor. He's got the paint. He's got the leg sleeve. Barner's got some drip.
Okay, good for him. Big 89. He looks like a house out there, dude. He's a big dude at tight end. I mean, like on paper, him and Loveland are pretty close, but Barner looks like noticeably bigger on the field. And there's value in that. Michigan does want to run the ball a lot. They bring in Trente Jones as the extra lineman. They bring in AJ Barner as kind of the jumbo tight end. But he had more snaps than Colston Loveland. I think it's been every week. And that, again, tell me that at the beginning of the season, I'd be like, you are freaking nuts, dude. There's no way Colston Loveland is not playing the most snaps of any tight end. Well, that's how it's going so far. Again, he had a great day. Colston Loveland had a phenomenal day catching the ball. So you can't really complain. I mean, if he was Michigan's leading receiver. He had 5 catches for 75 yards. That's a phenomenal day for a tight end. So you can't really complain, but I still think it is a little bit surprising that he's playing technically less than AJ Barner. But it's working. So they're going to keep doing it, I would assume. We're at 37 minutes, Chris. We got burning questions. You ready to fire them off?
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. You want to start? Go ahead and start us off this time.
I'll kick us off with the burning questions here. All right, so we touched on this a little bit earlier in the show, but I'm going to ask, and it's something I wanted to ask Harbaugh earlier today. Didn't get around to it. Wasn't sure that I would even get a straight answer, but I'm going to ask you. Maybe you can tell me what you thought his answer might be. Channel your inner Jim Harbaugh here.
Oh, boy.
Do you think that teams who have a tougher non-conference opponent on the schedule...
I really like Christmas. Oh, wait.
That's probably what would have happened. Do you think teams that have a tougher non-conference opponent on the schedule early in the season do have an advantage in terms of knowing what they really have as a program? Whether it's win or loss, do you think it gives you some sort of advantage early on saying, okay, now we know for sure who we are and what we are as a program? Or would you rather just kind of be where Michigan is at right now, where you don't have those tough early games and you continue to do a slow burn into the latter part of the season?
I've got multiple angles coming at you from this one. I like the question a lot. First of all, yes, you absolutely would find out more about your team and know what you really have if you play a better opponent. I mean, like that's a no-brainer to me. Is that more valuable than definitely winning and starting 7 or 8-0? I don't think so. Like with the current format and only 4 teams getting in the playoff, you just have to win. Like it doesn't, if Michigan's 7-0 with a win over Texas in week 2 or 7-0 with a win over ECU, that's the same. But if you lose that game to Texas, it screws everything. So I think, yes, you would definitely find out more about your team, what you really need to work on. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What's your team speed look like? What's your physicality? How's JJ truly reading you would learn a lot of those things, but I don't think it's all that more valuable. And then to take the other angle that you wanted, there's no way you would have got that answer from Jim. He would have said, he would have said, like, we respect every opponent. There's always something you can learn. We're trying to stay healthy. Love seeing the younger. I mean, like, he would have found a lot of ways to answer that question, but he wouldn't have given you what you were
what I
hoping
was looking for.
Yeah,
correct.
no.
And I knew that going into it, which is why I didn't ask it. But I'll be honest, Brandon. And I know you said, if you lose one of these early non-conference games, it puts you in a bad spot. But we've also seen the college playoff. And now I get it. This is the last year of the 4-team playoff. And so, moving forward, having a tougher non-conference opponent early in the season isn't going to be as devastating regardless of what the outcome is. But, I see a lot of people in the comments and we're talking about because if you lose, sure. But if you're like Ohio State and you go out and you win a game like that, the flip side is that can really set the tone for the remainder of the season as far as how you view yourself as a team and what you're capable of doing. I hate Ohio State with every fiber of my being. Not a big fan of Kyle McCord, certainly not a fan of Ryan Day. But the fact that they went into South Bend at night in primetime and found a way to win that game, you got to give them some credit, even though it didn't look pretty all the time. And the way they won it, there's some question marks there. And the Irish only had part of their team on the field for the last play of the game. The Buckeyes still won that game. And so I know a lot of people are concerned about what happens if you lose, but I'm of the mindset of what happens if you win? What does that do to your team? And what do you find out about yourself? And so I do think there's some value in having a tougher opponent earlier in the season to be able to gauge where you're at as a program. I'd rather have it early in the year than put it this way. I'd rather have it earlier in the year than to have to wait until week 10 to really find out what we have. Because if you go and you lose to Penn State late in the year with only 2 games left on the schedule, it almost feels like your back is really up against the wall now, because now the margin for error is 0. If you go out early and you lose against a top-ranked team like a Texas or a Bama or a Florida State and you recover and you play the rest of the year well, knowing that you had some things to improve on, you might find yourself in the same boat. So to me, I'd rather see a tougher non-conference opponent early on in the season, because it does suck sitting here. I watch these big games on TV and I love it. I'm enjoying every single moment of it. And I'm feeling like these teams are getting a true sense, Florida State, LSU, Bama, Texas, or Ohio State, Notre Dame, all of those teams that played in those games, they know where they're at now. And I think Michigan is going to have to wait a while before they know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. It's obvious. I mean, anybody who's played a sport, how is Michigan gonna learn more about themselves? Playing Bowling Green or playing Notre Dame? It's a no-brainer type of question, but you do get into the back and forth, and then it's tough though too, because you also have the argument, if you lose a game in week 2, you are no longer even that team anymore when week 10 or 11 or 12 rolls around. So it's it's kind of, I don't know. There's a lot of ways that you can look at that. Fact of the matter is, if you just win, it's obviously that's the best case scenario for everybody. Like Ohio State, they lucked up in a lot of ways and got a big win over Notre Dame on the road, top 10 early in the season. Now they have that in their pocket the whole rest of the way, and that's valuable. And it's a hell of a lot more fun to watch and cover. I mean, we've talked about that a lot too from a selfish standpoint. We're watching these games and trying to come up with stuff to talk about. The fans aren't really all that into it. And yeah, it'd be cool to see Michigan take on one of those teams. And they will. Actually, that was another thing. I was going to write a story about this. Urban Meyer last week kind of put his foot in his mouth about Michigan. And whatever. He's like, Michigan doing this and doing that. Last year and this year is the only time Michigan hasn't played a major Power 5 opponent going back 40 years. Yeah. It's just the way it worked out these last couple. Nobody loves it, but to suddenly say, and by the way, Michigan also doesn't play FCS opponents, and they play 9 conference games, which the SEC does not. So it was obviously Urban just being Urban, trying to take a shot at Michigan, whatever, fine. Michigan's not playing the Citadel. Michigan's not playing Furman. Michigan's not playing whatever team Bobby Boucher played for, right? They're playing FBS teams, not great ones. I'm not saying their non-conference schedule has been great. It has not. Last year and this year, pretty soft, but there's other explanations for it, and there's different things that seemingly got Ohio State just pounded Youngstown State a week ago. What about that? Where's that discussion? So anyway, I forgot about that because I was going to do an article and then I didn't. I just felt I don't know. Do we go to the Urban Meyer well too much, or is there no such thing?
I don't think there's any such thing. I mean, he's kind of like a gold mine for people shitting on him. So
Yeah.
you can never go to that well too many times. That cow's always going to be full of milk.
maybe I can revisit it even. All right, Chris, mine's pretty straightforward. We talked about Donovan Edwards quite a bit. We're now 4 games into the season. Just regulars, Donovan Edwards touchdown total, please, for the rest of this season.
Rushing and receiving?
Total touchdowns, 8 more games. Can you even do it? It's a hard one, isn't it?
I think, oh, God, it's very difficult. I would say, let me go. I'm trying to go through
opponents too. Yeah.
7.
Okay.
7 for number 7. That's where I put that number. And I can't remember what he finished at last year, but we're going to have to see a serious uptick in production, in red zone efficiency. I mean, we're going to have to see a pretty big change from what we saw during the first 1/3 of the season. And so comfortably, I would say, like, if you put the over under at 7.5, I'd probably take the under. At 6.5, I'm taking the over.
It's a tricky question, and that's why I thought it would be just kind of a fun discussion one, because like if you're going off what you've seen so far, you should say no, like 4, maybe like 1 every other game from here on out would be reasonable.
Yeah.
But dude, he have 3 this weekend and like not surprise anybody. So it is a tough question. I like your number 7. I think I was
Brandon, just hearing you say that Donovan Edwards with 3 rushing touchdowns in Nebraska, I would love. Yes. I hope that's what we see, man. We need to get that from him. The dude is just so talented. That would be a wonderful thing to see. And like most of what we've seen with Donovan Edwards, yards per carry, what he's done through the first 4 weeks, much of this with one big game, the numbers look completely different when you average them out over 4 or 5 weeks. And that's what it is. You're really just one big game away.
So I was thinking like 5 or 6. I don't hate your number 7. 4, like I said, seems reasonable based on what we've seen. He's not going to go the whole year without scoring, for crying out loud. But like we're 4 weeks in and he hasn't really been all that close. I mean, there were a couple goal line tries where they got stuffed. And Jim Harbaugh did say I wondered if he said what he said about Donovan being like the feature back at Nebraska, if he was just saying that just to say it, or if they actually were kind of like thinking like, we got to get him going. Like, we got to get him going this week. I wonder about that. So anyway, I like your answer. I would say 5, but it could, I mean, there's no way to know. If he suddenly hits his stride, he could score 1 every week with ease. But
do you think it's a concerted effort by like a conspiracy because they want Donovan so badly to return next year because they know they're going to lose Blake? Do you think Michigan's trying to sabotage his statistics to make sure he comes back?
I hope not, but it's probably going to work. It's probably
Michigan screwing over Donovan to get him back in Ann Arbor next year.
There you go.
Listen, this is kind of a playoff of the first question that I had for you, Brandon. Just talking about non-conference opponents and what that means for a team moving forward. We watched the game. Did OSU's win over Notre Dame change the way that you view the Buckeyes, particularly as it relates to this matchup that between Michigan and Ohio State at the end of the year? I mean, do you walk away from watching that thinking, okay, this Ohio State team might be a little more of a problem than I thought prior to that game?
No, it didn't. And I did say, okay, Notre Dame's at home. I think Notre Dame is Michigan light. I think they're built in a similar fashion. I'd still take most of Michigan's individual players over most of Notre Dame's individual players. It's not a landslide, and I don't know Notre Dame's roster in and out. I will admit, but when I'm taking JJ over Sam Hartman. It's not by a lot, but I mean, and I'm biased probably, but I like the mobility. He's a better athlete. I think he's a better passer outside of the pocket while he's moving. Aldrich Estime has been very good as a running back for Notre Dame. He's not my kind of running back. I like speedier guys. I like shiftier guys. So I'm taking Blake and Dono. I know Notre Dame does have some really solid offensive linemen, but dude, who's not taking Michigan's offensive line at this point of the game? This year, been a little shaky, but based on what we've seen, the returners, Sharon Moore, and then, I'm not going to go through every position, but long story short, it's still in Ohio State. They still have a ton of talent. They still are going to figure it out. Kyle McCord was rated ahead of J.J. McCarthy as a recruit coming out of high school. I don't believe it now, but like there was a reason for it. He's a big, strong kid. He's got a strong arm. They've got the best receiver in football. Travion Henderson is scary if you let him get scary. He had that long touchdown run that I don't think Michigan's backs can do that. I do think Travion Henderson is flat out just faster than Michigan's backs. I don't think he's better, but like I said, that's what I mean by he can be scary if you let him get scary. So no, it really didn't. I mean, I thought Notre Dame would probably win. So, kudos to Ohio State for getting it done in there, but Notre Dame boned it, dude. They went into that soft ass prevent and let, third and whatever the hell it was right down to the goal line and then playing the last couple snaps with 10 guys. I mean, those are losing mistakes in crunch time, and they made those mistakes. So yeah, Marcus Freeman probably could have been the TFG this week too for those plays. Easily. But no, it's Ohio State. It's Ohio State. They're going to be good. They're always going to play, up to some level of potential because of the talent that they have. But I mean, I still, Michigan still gets them at home this year and beat the shit out of them the last 2 years. Like I'm not scared of them, but like they're still a good team.
Yeah, I would say it turned it up just a notch.
Tiny bit?
I mean? Okay. A tiny bit for me, for the reasons I said before, is because I think the good thing is you watch Notre Dame and Ohio State play on Saturday night, and Ohio State didn't look like this dominant, surefire national championship team. I mean, it was a hard-fought game. Ohio State came out on top, but I didn't walk away from it thinking, my God, Ohio State is going to be a huge problem. What I do think, though, is what I said when I asked the first question about being in a game like that is I do think as it pertains to Ohio State specifically and how they view themselves and the confidence they have now, for them, they've got a big program win under their belt. And I do think that's going to help set the tone for the remainder of the season. And that's something that Michigan's going to have to wait on. So did it increase my concern level for the final game in November, regular season game in November? Yes, but only by a hair, and only because they were in that environment. They put themselves in that situation, came out on top. And I don't care who you are, when you win a game like that, that helps put your team on a different course for the rest of the season. So that's kind of where I'm at. I still think it's going to be Michigan. I still think, you get into the big house here, Ohio State. I mean, dude, the energy for that game, the pressure on Ryan Day's shoulders, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. There's going to be a lot going on for that football game. And ultimately, I think Michigan's just too talented. We just need to see the Wolverines play to their full potential, and we really haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hate to even give them credit, but that's a nice win. That's a nice win to go into Notre Dame and get that thing done.
If that was Michigan that did that and won that way, we would be feeling great about it.
Absolutely. I mean, you like I said, you hate to say that, you hate to give them that kind of credit, but it probably needs to be there. I was trying to find, I don't remember if Donovan Edwards ran track deep into his high school career. He did I was just curious because someone was saying, I personally think Travion Henderson is faster than Michigan's backs, not by a lot, but like he was known as a track speed guy coming out of high school. Like that's not a big deal. That run was really impressive against Notre Dame.
Of course he's faster, Brandon. What are you talking about?
If you want to go tit for tat, Travion Henderson's 100-meter personal record is faster than Dono's. It's whatever.
How dare you? See, another example of Ohio against the world, right there in front of our faces.
I just keep it real. Somebody said, "There's no way he's fast." I'm like, well, yeah, there is a way, but it's fine. Like I said, I don't think he's a better all-around back, but straight line speed, I think he's a little faster. Anyway, here we go. My question, Chris. I didn't count, but I think it was like 6 or 7 times. Trevor Keegan today said, like, we're going to get it going. It's about to click. We're right there. We're going to be rolling. Trust, like, I don't know. He said it a lot. Yep. And I think it was just because the way the questions were asked of him, it was just kind of how he ended his answers. But I wanted to ask you, are we just like, Michigan just ran for over 200 yards on Saturday. Blake Corum basically had 100, scored 2 touchdowns. The quarterback ran well. Donovan, he didn't have a very good game again, I don't think, right? He had 13 yards or something. Yeah.
Something like that,
But
yeah.
point being, they ran for 200, won the game easily. Are we just like really spoiled at this point where like we look at that performance and we're like, oh, that wasn't good? It was
Let
good.
me ask you this. If we take, and you know I love the guy, but let's just say for the sake of the argument, let's take Donovan Edwards out of the equation and the lack of production there. Are the questions still being asked about the offensive line? Because Blake's numbers look pretty damn good. JJ ran for 51 yards. The pass blocking protection has been great. I think has it still just one sack on the year? Did he get sacked against?
He got sacked twice this week, but it still hasn't been a lot. Yeah, it hasn't been a lot.
So they're keeping JJ McCarthy clean for the most part. I think a lot of this concern or question about the offensive line is directly related to the lack of production from Donovan Edwards and trying to figure out what that issue is. So I think if you take that out of the equation and you look at the rest of the numbers, the offensive line has been great. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I picked up on it too. Trevor Keegan repeatedly, we're close. Yeah. We're almost there. And I'm like, you know what? I get that they have some things to work on and you know, communication on the offensive line. They were asked a lot about, you know, how do transfers, how easy is it to assimilate and be able to pick up and, you know, continue that level of success. And to be honest, I think the Michigan offensive line has been fine. They've played good.
Yeah.
If not for the lack of production from Donovan Edwards, I don't think those questions are being asked at this point. Now,
it was almost
I want to make sure that I'm not saying it's all on Donovan Edwards. There's a lot of moving parts. And even Trevor Keegan said, like, when things aren't happening, he's like, it's one guy here and there. You know, one guy not doing his job, a couple guys here and there not doing their job. So they acknowledge that they've got some things to do to get better. But by and large, I think they've played pretty good this far.
I think so too. I almost wanted to be like, Trevor, we're not saying you blow. Like, you know, it's not that. It's just like he just kept, like I said, I think it was more of a product of the questions that were being asked. And that was just kind of how he like ended his statement each time, like kind of the same way. I don't think he went in trying to convince himself or convince anybody else, but I did think it was, I'm like, dude, he said that like 6 times now. Like it's almost there. It's almost there. Like it's kind of there. The running game's been, no, probably not as dominant as we thought it was going to be, but it's been pretty good. And you're right. You take Donovan out of the equation and it looks fine. I mean, Khalil Mullings, didn't even mention him. He came in last week just at the very end and piled off 40 yards rushing, I think, on 6 carries. So,
which didn't really help the Donovan Edwards issue.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? Like it almost was like, okay, well, if Khalil Mullings can like, you know, get the yards in limited carries, what's going on with number 7? So I think a lot of the questions about the O-line have to relate to that.
Yeah. So I thought it was a little bit I don't want to say forced, but I was like, maybe we're asking him about it too much. Maybe that's kind of how he's feeling up there at the podium right now. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to move on to the quarterbacks here, Brandon. And this was something also that we heard in the press conference today. As of now, going into week 5, Jim Harbaugh still does not know exactly. Now, maybe he does, but we've heard this is new Jim. This is cool Jim. He's giving media the answers now. So if he was shooting us straight, they still don't know who the backup quarterback is going to be at this point. It's a fluid situation. And we know you don't want to have to rely on it. You expect J.J. McCarthy to be out there all the time. But we also know that you're only one play away. We saw that with Jack Tuttle a couple weeks ago. And so here's my question. The last 3 starting quarterbacks at Michigan were all at one point backups at Michigan. Joe Milton was a backup. Cade McNamara was a backup. J.J. McCarthy was a backup. Are you at all concerned that there isn't that guy on the roster right now, that next in line, that this is the guy that if, you know, whether it's injury or JJ takes off, we don't know who that guy is. You know, is it Jaden Davis as a true freshman? Like, is it a portal guy? Are you a little bit concerned that guy might not be on the roster right now?
It's a good question. Yeah, a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. I mean, just knock on all the wood. Knock on all the wood. JJ doesn't get hurt, and then it's not a concern at all. But no, you're right. I mean, you'd like to think that if your roster is really healthy and you've recruited correctly, that the next guy is waiting in the wings. Like that's the perfect scenario, but it doesn't have to be that way. But a lot of the big time programs, it kind of is that way. Not always, but and obviously the world of the transfer portal has changed that, because if a guy gets beat out or he thinks someone's coming for his job, he'll just leave and go somewhere else where he can play a little more peacefully. Like that has changed things a little bit. But I think back to like when Clemson was as hot as any team in the country. They just had, boom, 5-star starter, 5-star incumbent, and they moved it up. And then there was it just kept moving like that. They always had their starter on the field who was a 4 or 5-star kid, and the backup was right there who was also a 4 or 5-star kid. And yeah, Michigan doesn't really seem to have that now. I mean, like Alex Orji was ranked, I think, decently as a prospect, and we all like a lot of his potential, but he's not ready to come in and run the offense. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think that he is. He's not. And no, I don't think anybody on the team is. That's why I said I think if you have to throw a guy in there, you might as well go with Jack Tuttle, because at least he's played a lot of football before, even though he's a transfer. So, yeah, Jim Harbaugh, look, he has shown a propensity to go out and find exactly what he needs in the portal. So if that's what the move is next year at quarterback, I trust that he'll do it and do it well. He's done it at center a couple of times now. He's added Ernest Hausman. He's added Josiah Stewart. He's added a starting cornerback in Josh Wallace. He's done it in the past. Mike Dana. There's been guys that have come in and really carried their weight. And, that might be the most realistic approach at this point, because I don't think you want to, if you're talking, we're looking obviously pretty far down the line here, but if you're talking about a true freshman, Jaden Davis, I don't think that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so your original question was, is that guy on the roster right now, right? Basically.
Are you concerned that guy
there's
might
not
be on the roster right now?
A little bit. Yeah.
Like
I said, a healthier roster, I think that guy would probably be there, but it's tough, man, because you only play one QB, and guys don't want to sit and wait. So and especially with the portal, how it is, they just hit the road. So that's a tougher thing to do now than it probably ever has been before.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree that you can turn to the portal to get a quarterback, assuming that, the caliber of quarterback is in there that you're going to want, that, at the University of Michigan. But, am I concerned that guy might not be on the roster right now? Yeah, I am a little bit concerned about it, but I'm also, through 4 weeks, still the backup quarterbacks total have thrown four passes combined, and so for me, the biggest question is, why haven't we seen more out of these guys? I know it's not a big deal. I don't want to harp too much on the backup quarterback situation, but I do think there's going to come a point in time this year where you're going to need to rely on, whether it's a Jack Tuttle, whether it's a Davis Warren, somebody to come in for a little while and have to make some plays. I just think it's inevitable that the season plays out that way, particularly when you have a JJ McCarthy, who is a dual threat, who even said today, if I've got to go and get extra yards and it's a matter of me going out of bounds or getting the extra yards for the first down, you better believe I'm going to put my shoulder down and get the first down. Like, that's the type of mentality he has. And so I'm just a little bit puzzled by why, again, even last week, we just haven't seen much run out of these guys. And then Jim Harbaugh today acknowledging that they still really don't know who that QB2 is going to be, because for the last few years, we've known who the next guy up is. Right now, we don't know who that guy is. And that's just kind of a strange place to be.
Little side note, I'm going to let this Goj Yahoo stay in here. He might learn something here tonight if he tunes in a little bit. And if you think we're losers, and what the hell are you? You're listening to us, dumbass. Enjoy. Chris, this is a really good question based on what you just talked about. How did you feel about JJ's usage as a runner then, with all of what we just discussed?
Yeah,
it's Rutgers. Did you need him to run? He got sacked once or twice, maybe, I think, actually. Did you need him to run 6 times for 50 yards? It certainly looks good when it's working, but he is going to take a hit, if he's tucking the ball and keeping it and can't get out of bounds. Like, how did just overall, big picture, JJ as a runner, he wants to run. He talked about that today. He's been chomping at the bit to run a little bit, and now he got a chance to, and it worked pretty well multiple times. Like, how do you feel about that, given exactly what you just asked me about?
I like it. I like it because I think it's part of JJ's game. And like I said earlier in the show, I think that that's a wrinkle that, when you incorporate it into this offense, it just makes them so much more dangerous. And again, if you've got to deal with Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, and JJ McCarthy as a running threat, that creates a lot of problems for the defense, and that opens up things for the passing game, you know, in the latter part of the game. And so that is certainly an element that I want to see continue to be utilized when it comes to JJ McCarthy. But it's even more reason why I think it's important that whoever it is that might need to come in, even if it's JJ needs a couple series out, you know, if you know, he's got to go in the 10, he's got to get an ankle wrapped or something. It's not anything that's going to keep him out for a week, but you're talking 1 or 2 series in today's college football, where the way the clock is, 1 or 2 series out of 7 total offensive possessions, that's a big deal. So you got to know who is that guy going to be. And that's why I keep going back to, like, I wish we knew who that guy was and that Michigan had a surefire, you know, they don't got to be the starter next year, but this is our QB2. This is a guy that can come in and move the ball down the field. And as of now, the only quarterback on the roster that's completed a pass during a game is Jaden Denigal. He was 1 for 1. Every other quarterback on that roster has not completed a pass this year. And I think that just puts Michigan in a tight spot if JJ is out running around doing what he does and needs to come out for a series or 2.
That's crazy, because I think and I'm not trying to disparage him, but just based on his skill set and kind of where he was as a prospect, I might put Denigal like 5th on the depth chart. Like,
yeah,
I mean, and that's, you know, that's reasonable.
Samaj Morgan was the one he hit. It was downfield. It was a great pass, and you know, I think who is it? Davis Warren is 0 for 3 or 0 for 4. Maybe he's thrown an interception. Tuttle hasn't passed the ball. Alex Orji hasn't thrown a pass, and Alex Orji wasn't even dressed. I mean, he was wearing clothes, but not dressed last weekend. So the back was like, damn it.
The photos I could have got of that guy if he was nude. Oh my God, Alex Orji.
Wow.
I saw the shots out on the beach, dude. He's a specimen. This guy's a specimen.
Man. You gotta let the guy sling it. You gotta let Alex Orji throw a pass. Come on.
I love running quarterbacks. Always have, always will. So, and JJ can run. He's a fast kid, but he's a little slight. He's not 230. He's about $190, maybe 200 pounds. Yep. I like him as a runner. Like, if you could tell me, like, he's not going to get hit, cool. But, like, we just know that's not how it works. He's going to scramble. He's going to take a shot. He's already taken a couple big hits this year. He got popped right in the mouth, whatever game that was, after kind of getting tripped up from behind. So you don't love it. But it was one of the first 2, because I wasn't at the third one. So anyway, I love him as a runner. I think it adds an element to the offense that takes it to a new level, and I love that about it. It should make the running game more effective. It should make the play action game more effective. It should make him as a runner more effective. But yeah, dude, that not having a backup even like at all. And actually, you know what? To address what you said earlier, I actually believe Jim Harbaugh. I don't think they do know, because like usually stuff like that's kind of obvious. Like, I mean, that's the guy. Of course, that's the guy.
Yeah, we knew it was Cade when Milton was out there. We knew it was JJ when Cade was out there. Right.
So I think I tend to believe Jim Harbaugh. I don't think that's lip service. I don't think it's coach speak. I think they are really still trying to figure it out. I mean, if JJ went down, I think they'd know who they would put in, but I don't think they'd love it. I don't think they'd feel great about it. So we'll see.
If that's the case, then don't you? I mean, again, I don't want to be the guy that's questioning, the 2-time Big Ten champions, 2 wins over Ohio State. But I do got a question. Shouldn't you allow them to throw the ball a little bit more in the latter part of the game? If you're not playing JJ, hardly at all in the second half, like, how do you come out of 4 weeks with only 4 passing attempts among, 4 or 5 options at quarterback combined? Like, to me, that's crazy. And if it's something they're still trying to figure out, I think, why wouldn't you try to figure it out when you have the opportunity to do it?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Back to you. That sounded like we really went back and forth a couple times, but that was my question. JJ as a runner there. So
that was your question. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip my 4th question here, because it's about Donovan Edwards, and I think we've beat that horse to death. We've kind of talked about what's going on there and where we think things are at. So I'm going to go down to question number 5, my last question, Brandon.
All right.
It's a big one. You're going to have to put some thought into this. After 4 weeks. Now, before I ask you the question, going into the season, I believe you and I were pretty much in the same boat that Michigan's winning a national championship this year, right? Prior to the season, that was our belief.
This is their best shot to do so for
this
sure.
is the year. And we had them at least getting there, right?
Yes.
We were okay. So after 4 weeks, what have you seen from Michigan that gives you the confidence that the Wolverines will still compete for a national championship this year? What have you seen from them that still gives you that confidence?
You threw that word in there right at the last second. That changes my answer a little bit. I'm still going to give you both answers. One thing that I've seen, nobody else is dominant either. So Michigan's just as good as all of those other teams that are picked to make the playoff right now. They're just as good as Ohio State. They could beat Alabama. They could beat Georgia. They could beat LSU, Florida State. Like, they could beat any one of those teams on a given day. Now, have they played up to their fullest potential yet, to where I think if they played tomorrow, they beat those teams? Probably not. But they've got a lot of time to figure it out. They're still gelling on the offensive line. I think JJ is going to continue to get better. I think the offense is going to continue to round into form. I just mentioned it. The secondary, which might be one of the best 5-man units in the country, just played its first game together last week and didn't look awesome doing it. There were some bumps in the road there a little bit, especially on that one big play at the beginning of the game. So I think there's plenty of room for Michigan to get better. I mean, I haven't watched any of the other teams as much as I've watched Michigan, obviously, but Alabama's got a loss already. You know, Clemson took Florida State down to the wire and probably should have beat them. USC, I don't even know if they have a defense, honestly. Like, yeah, Caleb Williams is amazing. Their offense is scary, but they give up 40 points like it's nothing. I just think Michigan's as good as anybody out there. So that, along with the potential for Michigan to still continue to get better, because I don't think they're playing anywhere near as well as they can, makes me think that they're still just fine when it comes to their end goal.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely subscribe to that. I think, for me, and I know that Bowling Green wasn't pretty, but I still haven't forgotten the things we saw from J.J. McCarthy, the footwork, the movement in the pocket, the vision down the field, some of the throws he's making. I do think he's really progressed from last year to this year. Blake Corum, when you look at his numbers, he's pretty much right where he was this time last year. The offensive line, again, if you take Donovan Edwards out of the equation, I think they're doing fine. I think offensively at the wide receiver position, you've got Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson, 2 solid targets there, and then an AJ Barner and a Colston Loveland. So JJ has plenty of targets there. Plus, you can also utilize Donovan Edwards. The defense has been lights out, and I think that that's something that we know travels. Michigan prides themselves on having a tremendous defense. Started with Mike McDonald, has continued under Jesse Minter, and so I think the defense is elite. They got a couple of their guys back this weekend who are going to be a major factor moving forward. So I have a ton of confidence in what I've seen so far. Is there plenty of room for improvement? There's no doubt about it. But I think the other point that you made is also what gives me confidence. And it also is making this college football season pretty damn exciting because there is not a dominant Alabama. There is not a dominant Ohio State, a dominant Clemson. What we've grown accustomed to, during the college football playoff era. I mean, people are talking about Washington, being one of the top teams.
They look good on offense for sure.
Florida State in the mix. I mean, you've got a number of teams right now that have a legitimate shot at competing for a national championship. So for all those reasons, I still like Michigan's chances in terms of getting there. I do think they're going to get through the season, ultimately end up in Indy. The one that I have a big question mark, right? We talked about it before. Happy Valley, Penn State on the road. We'll see how that turns out. But ultimately, it hasn't been exciting. It hasn't been, we've talked about it. It's not gaudy. There's not a ton of numbers, but Michigan's doing everything they need to do to put themselves in a position to be there at the end. And I think that's what we're going to see. And so I'm not backing off where I started this season at, especially not after 4-0, number 2 in the country, and everybody healthy. I still got the Wolverines playing for a national championship.
Yeah, right there. Oregon, Texas. Throw that. Like, there's like 10 teams, 12 teams where you're like, they got enough. They got enough to get hot. They got a talented quarterback. They've got this. They've got that. Speed, defense, whatever it might be. I mean, I'm not ruling out Bama yet. Georgia still hasn't lost. LSU looks like they could be dangerous if they put it together. I mentioned USC and Caleb Williams. That's the Heisman winner. There's a lot of teams out there that can do some things, and Michigan's one of them. And they're not playing their best football yet. I mean, you could probably say that about most teams at this point. Oregon looks pretty polished. Washington looks pretty polished. I think a lot of teams are still figuring a lot of stuff out. We know
Oklahoma's
Alabama is.
undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Andrew Anthony out there. in Oklahoma.
I was about to say,
Oh.
is it going to happen?
Did you see his catch last weekend? I mean, listen, if for those of you in Ann Arbor that thought the guy couldn't catch the football, turn on some of the film in Norman, Oklahoma. There.
Where's CJ? We're just waiting. It was an hour
It's
and
coming.
14. Yeah, he's writing it down right now. All right.
That might be the latest mention. There we go.
There we go. All right, Chris, I actually have two left. One will be kind of like a closeout question. It'll actually be good because we'll look ahead of Nebraska a little bit. But I wanted to talk about Rod Moore. Probably should have put this earlier. I usually try to go like player specific, then team specific, then big picture. So this is out of order a little bit. But Rod Moore returned to the lineup. I know we're both extremely high on him. He looks awesome in the number 9. Big part of that defense. Coach on the field. He's been described all of those ways. He came up on a bad angle, missed the tackle in the open field. That's not him. Like, he is the opposite of that. Like, he's trusty. He's like Mike Sainristil, always in the right place at the right time, doesn't blow plays. It was rust. It was maybe he's a little hurt still. I mean, there was a lot of discussion going on up in the box about that on Twitter about why that play happened. So, Rod Moore, first game back. First of all, he didn't record a stat, to my knowledge. He didn't record a tackle. He didn't really make a mark on the game other than that bad one. He played 24 of 46 defensive snaps, so he was only out there about half the time. What's a letter grade for Rod Moore in this return?
I don't know, a B. Solid B performance. I mean, he was out the first 3 weeks. It's your first game back. You're kind of, you're getting your sea legs, and I mean, it's kind of hard to come down on the guy for his first game back. And then when you factor in, how important he is and how skilled he is, and it's just a matter of shaking the rust off. So I don't think it was a terrible performance.
I'm going C. I'm just gonna. I mean, it is. It's a rust. It's a, maybe he's not 100%. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, but he, like I said, that was a very un-Rod Moore like play to start that game and let Rutgers get into the end zone. He just doesn't do that. Him and Mikey just don't they don't miss tackles. They don't take bad angles. They don't miss plays. So, like I said, whether it was rust, whether it was he's not 100%, whatever the case is, he only played half the snaps, so he's on a pitch count. It looks like either that or he was working through something still. I don't know, and that's another thing that's been kind of weird. We saw Will Johnson play the 8 snaps one day. We saw Makari Page play the 10 snaps. Now Rod Moore's back. He only plays half the snaps in a Big Ten game, and didn't look like himself, I guess is a softer way to put it. I mean, like, he didn't suck, but no stats for him, and he made, like, the one time you noticed him was like, ugh, because of a bad play. So, like, because of that, I think it wasn't his best day for sure. So we'll see how that continues to look next week.
I'm going to take the over, Brandon.
Chris is taking the over on Ron Moore being good.
Ron Moore? What is that, his cousin?
I said Rod.
No, I think we need to play the tape back. That was a Ron Moore for sure.
I was putting my head down. Rod Moore. I don't know. I'm nasally, dude. I'm a nasally guy. All right.
Ronnie Moore.
I know his name's Ron Moore with a mustache. Comes out there still wearing the different
backwards
number.
9,
right. Wearing number 19 like last year. All right. Last question. We'll get out of here on this one. This will get us looking to Nebraska a little bit. Trevor Keegan said probably one of his favorite places to play on the road. Super loud, just a crazy environment, but the fans were super nice. And apparently they're doing some triple option stuff there now. I've saw a couple people talking about that. Matt Rule, I don't know. He's figuring it out. They're now 2-2. They haven't beat anybody. They lost to Minnesota. They got trounced by Colorado, who now looks like they're not world beaters.
Also worth noting that they prepare every game like they're playing for Michigan.
They're playing like they're going to play Michigan. That is a quote from one of their players. So, what I love my 1 to 10 scale questions, Chris. 1 to 10 worry level playing the Huskers in Lincoln. 1 to 10.
It's a 4 at this point. Okay. I do believe Michigan is the better football team. I think the defense will travel. And the only reason it's at a 4 is really because it's a road environment. That's a tough building to win a football game in. I don't care who you are, especially when you're a top-rated team coming in. I mean, you better believe that Nebraska hasn't had a great start to the season. Matt Rule hasn't had the start to the season that he wants. You can make up a lot of ground and buy a lot of goodwill with the fan base if you beat number 2 Michigan in Lincoln. And so I think Nebraska is going to be ready for it, but I'm still just at a 4. I think they're going to be overmatched on both sides of the ball. And I think I'm going with what you said earlier in the show, Brandon. You kind of alluded to. I think we're going to get, I'm going to keep saying it till it happens, goddammit. We're going to get a big performance from one Mr. Donovan Edwards on Saturday. On the road. It's going to look
speaking it into existence, man. That's where I'm at.
Speaking it until it happens. Big performance from Donovan Edwards on the road. And then you look at his numbers after that and you'll say, well, okay, everything looks pretty similar to what it looked like last year. All will be right with the world.
I'm actually going to go a 3, Chris. I mean, I'm with you. I'm just not that worried about them. The road can be tricky, but they're not ready. That's a team that's not ready to play with Michigan yet. The changes, the system changes. You know, they're starting. Yeah, Jeff Sims. I don't think is playing. I think he's hurt. That's the guy they started their season. He was a turnover.
Oh, he's not
machine.
playing. Okay, so
I don't think so. I could be wrong on that. That might need a little bit more research, but I know he was dinged up and he was not playing. He didn't play last week, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if there's Jeff Sims injury status revealed. Did he play against Louisiana Tech? I know he was hurt and he missed some time. Somebody in the comments might. Yeah, okay. He did not suit up for Nebraska this past week when they beat Louisiana Tech. He injured his ankle in the fourth quarter against Colorado, and they held him out. And so yeah, they've got some. That's why they're doing some different stuff with the option, and it's weird now. But I mean, I don't know. Jeff Sims is kind of like a scary player because he's 6'4", 225, and he can run like a deer. But he also really likes to throw it to the other team. So it's like it might be better for Michigan if he was in there. There's a little bit of a wild card when it comes to that and their personnel and what they're doing with the new regime.
I don't like wild cards. I like known commodities, Brandon.
I'm with you. I'm just not worried about them at this point. So I'll say a 3. I think Michigan's going to probably easier than they did Rutgers, I think. I mean, I think you said it earlier, right? I said, which one would you be more afraid of? You said Rutgers.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best way to look at it right now. Can you hear the music, Chris? I remember I did this one time. Okay, good. We're getting ready to fade it on out now. We're approaching an hour and a half. We just love talking ball. It's a couple of dinks. Was somebody dogging my headset earlier? Somebody's like, hey, Brandon, when are you going to get a nice, cool microphone like Chris?
You like the gamer headset.
Perfect. Sounds good. Easy, portable.
Just like you, Brandon. Easy and portable.
Well,
think about it.
It's pretty accurate. Pretty accurate at the point. Feeling great. We'll be back on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. That's Fan-Led Wednesday. Bring your questions, bring your discussions, and we'll CJ, thank you. One Joe Milton just busted off like a 22-mile-an-hour scamper into the end zone. You don't think your boy can get 15?
No.
Yeah, I'm getting 15, dude. I'm getting 15. I'm just going to get a shirt with the giant 15 on the front of it.
Maybe 15 stitches.
I'm not doing it that Chris wants to. He was like, let's go right now. He wants to drive in a car next to me on a street. Not doing that. No. This needs to be official. This needs to be...
Or we need to get one of those, on the side of the road where it tells you how fast you're going.
I would do that.
I think to have one of those in your hometown, we can pull over there and make it happen.
I can't wait till this goes down. We need to field some punts at some point, too. All right, we're getting out of here. Wednesday, 7 o'clock.